Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we discussed the cinematic masterpiece that was Shadows Amidst Snowstorms, aka the Susbedo event. We're still keeping our eyes out for Dorian every time we step on Dragonspine. And this week, we'll be discussing the Guili Assembly. Additionally, I want to remind travelers to visit talesofteyvat.com to see visual representations of the lore mentioned during today's podcast. Your guides have put them together for you to make things a little easier to understand. On our site, you can also find some awesome goodies, including artist spotlights from the community for each episode, wallpapers for download, and a way to check out some of our favorite Genshin merch. Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. So today we're going to take a step back into the deep history of Liyue and the gods, archons, adepti, and monsters that have ruled over it. Did that make sense?
Everybody and their mother.
So what exactly is the Guili Assembly? We hear about it a lot in Genshin, but it's something that's not currently around in Liyue Harbor.
You know, when I first heard of it, I really thought it was like an assembly of 3 people. It was, hey, here's this group of people that are running this whole shebang. But I was so wrong. It's like a whole area of people that all lived in I guess that's the northern part of Liyue, you would say?
Yeah, I feel like it's the dwelling of people north. When Liyue Harbor sort of decided to expand and they had all these people like sort of move northward into the plains. So Guili Assembly is really like the Guili Plains.
Yeah, it's just like at one point it stretched out slightly beyond the plains. You know, it's like all semantic. It's all that whole area. It was a very flourishing, prosperous group of people.
It's so confusing to me anytime someone says north, south, east, or west in this game, because I'm like, wait, is the map oriented properly? Which way is actually north? But for the sake of this episode, we mean just like we were looking at the map, basic north, up, right?
Yeah. Which is the same. That's the one thing I think they made it a little bit. They try not to move that map around. So you're looking at it really kind of as if to be a flat earther of Teyvat. We're just looking at one area.
No, not a flat earther.
I think Teyvat is flat.
Yeah.
I mean,
no.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, come on. We don't even know where the Dark Sea is yet. I think the Dark Sea is under us.
It actually might be, yeah.
So
I'm not convinced.
I think that we're just like a 7-layer dip.
Yes, we are.
We're delicious.
A delicious 7-layer dip.
We're actually in the 3rd world because we are the 3rd Honkai game.
Stick a chip in me.
No, that's Celestia's the chips. They only come down when needed.
Oh, okay. Right.
So all the sky nails. They're chips that fell in.
They are tempted. They are tempted most recently, aren't they?
I'm tempted. But anyway, besides flat Teyvat, 7-layer dip Teyvat, 7 layers of drama too. So the Guili Assembly was originally created by Guizhong and Zhongli. We know Zhongli as Morax, aka our god of geo, god of contracts, god of history, another person with 5,000 names, and the creator of Mora, despite the fact that he's broke. And Zhongli,
I feel like it was sort of Guizhong, the god of dust, who was like, I'm taking my people northward, and she sort of appealed to Zhongli and was like, you're gonna help me, right?
Yeah, and she gave him like a dumbbell or something and was like, take this. This is our bond now. We're going to work together and we'll protect the people together.
Which I just constantly think, is that a translation issue? Like a dumbbell is the weirdest gift.
I know. I thought the same thing too.
I was like, did this not transfer correctly?
But hold up. You see now, in that meeting, which we can read in the Memory of Dust, basically they like flirting, but it's mentioned that Zhongli is kind of a meathead.
Yeah.
Because he was very young at the time. So like, what if he was just a gym bro?
GTL, Gym Tan Laundry.
Oh.
This just kind of confirms to me that all Geos are either insanely smart or just so much of a meathead that they don't care.
As dumb as a box of rocks, if you would.
Well,
I mean, just look into Ito and kind of like Ito, dumb as a box of rocks. Goro is just innocent and like naive. So is
super
Noelle,
smart.
innocent and naive. Ningguang, mastermind.
wait,
Yeah.
Goro
Albedo.
is super smart.
That's what I'm saying. They're either super smart or dumb and innocent.
Yeah, Albedo, Ningguang, super smart.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
maybe that's also, we always say sometimes that, while there's no connection so far, that the Archons seem to have some similarities with the people who get their visions. So if Zhongli started as a meathead and became a genius, which he did, and a lot of people think that's because of Guizhong and that she really instilled the importance of history and intellect into him, it would make sense that, there's kind of two halves of a whole there for him and his vision. But
It's
Wait.
interesting that you said that, though, that because I think with that same catalyst, and correct me if I'm wrong, Al, but with Memory of Dust, I think she says she put all of her wisdom within it. And
Yes.
like, if you can unlock it, you can have it. Like, she says it like when she's dying, like, forget about that dumbbell, you'll never be able to open it. But she says like all of her smarts are in there. Maybe he actually got it
Yeah.
open.
I'm so shook. Like, where is the dumbbell?
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Apple is
I-
like, I don't know where it is.
Yeah,
Hi,
I'm
Siri.
gonna take my watch off. Sorry about that.
I will say, from what we've learned about Zhongli since Guizhong's passing, it does seem like he kind of mourned and became a different person.
Yeah.
That's when he became known as the God of Contracts. His first contract was created after her death. So he really wised up, smartened up, and became really good at strategy at that point, too. So it would make sense if he maybe even in mourning had been able to unlock it, like truly showing
Yeah.
empathy in a way he had never done before.
Kind of the opposite of Deshret, isn't it?
Yeah, Deshret went mad instead.
Mm-hmm. Everybody grieves differently.
Yeah, everyone grieves differently. There's 7 stages. Some skip some.
And also, I think it depends on the woman that makes you go mad.
True. The goddess of flowers was quite manipulative and sketchy at times. So
Exactly.
Wrong.
yes, she was. She planned her death.
No, she foresaw her death.
No, I think she planned it. She foresaw the cataclysm
Had a
Yes.
pussy.
She did, yeah.
Yeah.
and then
And
planned
her
her
death.
death. No,
Well, she would have foresaw her death if she planned it. So you're both right.
that's also true. Anyway, back to Liwei. So Guizhong and Morax, they make this deal together and they move both of their people into what is now known as the Guili Plains. While there, they team up with some of the Adepti, specifically and mostly Streetward Rambler, aka Madame Ping, and Cloud Retainer, as well as Marchosius, aka Guoba, the Stove God.
Yay.
And there are quite a few
Yeah.
other Adepti, and it's even mentioned that there might have been 1 or 2 other small gods involved as well in the assembly, but those are really your main characters. And eventually this assembly does disassemble after Guizhong's death during the
And so
Archon
this
War.
is before the Archon War, right?
So they form prior to the Archon War, but Guizhong dies during the Archon War.
Right.
And once she dies, it is said that there's a huge storm, and the Adepti and Morax and Guoba helped move all the people back down south toward Liwei Harbor. And that's when they first established the harbor, and Morax took over and made his first contract. So it can be assumed that by the time they reached Liwei Harbor and he made that first contract, that he was the Archon, that he had come out on top.
And
From
Cloud
the
Retainer
war.
was heartbroken along with Morax.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And Madame Ping. That they all loved her.
Instead of a love triangle, we had a love square, and no one won in that situation, much like the other love triangle.
Well,
It's so God.
It's so awkward too, because when you jump into the current arc, not the current Archon line, but like the Liyue Archon line, the modern storyline of Genshin, when Zhongli has the Traveler getting ready to do like is it Rite of Ascension, like when Morax is dead and we're helping prepare the ceremony for like his funeral, he sends us to get a bell from Madame Ping, which we actually learn a little bit more about during Lantern Rite this past year. And when we go to see Madame Ping, she says that an old friend had given her the bell. She basically knows that Morax is asking for it, despite the fact that Morax is supposed to be dead. So it's insinuated that Zhongli is avoiding her for unknown reasons. Whether he thinks he's being slick and hasn't been caught in his fake death, or maybe he is still upset and hasn't really talked to Madame Ping since Guizhong's death. I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, she left, so that would be, he kind of moved on too, but like she left that kind of the adepti and wanted to live amongst the people and be a normal person as much as she possibly could be.
And that was after Guizhong's death?
Yeah, that was after Guizhong's death. So I think it was part of her way of dealing. Maybe her way of dealing actually was just, I can't see people anymore. I got to be on my own.
That's so sad.
And she packed up her bags and walked on out. We'll include a link to the beautiful cutscene that actually has all of this from the Lantern Rite, like you said. We'll have it on the site. It is very beautiful.
Yeah, because Cloud Retainer also seems to have been avoiding Madame Ping in that Lantern Rite storyline too. Mm-hmm. Although we forced her to go talk to her.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think it was like Madame Ping was like, deuces, see you later. Deal with your own shit. I'm out.
Wait, so do you think that the dumbbell could be the cleansing bell?
No, I don't think so, because in this cutscene piece, they talk about the creation of the bell and how it was Guizhong was trying to make music from it, basically through mechanics, making music. And Streetward Rambler was like, you can't make music this way. It has to be like real, actual music. Yeah, so that's kind of where that bell comes in.
Yeah, Guizhong believed that mechanics and mechanisms could create simple melodies that could help assist and inspire, where Madame Ping believed that music could never be replaced by things made of mechanics, and that it had to be something that came from like the heart. And that's where they end up getting into a lot of heated debate, and they bring in Morax, who they considered a neutral third party, to settle the debate, and he just confiscated the bell. He was like, nope, this is mine now. Stop fighting over it, kids. And then eventually, when Guizhong dies, Madame Ping asks for it, and he then gives it to her to hold on to and protect. But I would like to take a little bit of a deep dive into all of our characters, if that's cool with everyone that was in the Guili Assembly, because while the Guili Assembly itself can kind of be simplified, I guess, in a few quick sentences, there's a lot of drama and lore and shit that goes on when you take a deeper look at all the players.
Yeah, it gets really complex and a little unsure in some places. I think as we'll start to unravel when things happened.
I guess let's start with Guizhong. So I was reading, and it says that Guizhong is presumed to be older than Morax.
Really?
Yeah,
more than likely, because there's a possibility that she settled in a location somewhere where, like, south of Liyue Harbor, and I know she moved northward after a particular flood, which we'll get into, but there's a high likely chance, because yes, Zhongli is the oldest Archon. He is not the oldest god.
I mean, she's dead, so he wouldn't be.
He wins.
I mean, he
might still be the oldest god, like today.
Marchusius is still technically alive in Guoba.
That's true. I didn't realize the whole, like, Marchusius fell asleep for X amount of years, forgot who they were, and woke up as Guoba. I was like, oh.
The only thing that woke him up, Zhongli. Zhongli's cooking.
Oh my god, and baby Zhongli is so cute.
Oh, it's so cute.
Yeah.
I just want like a little like plushie of her as a baby. She was so adorable. But so Guizhong, possibly older than Zhongli, and she had a lot of guts. she was also known as the god of dust, and she was very understanding of the fact that she wasn't that powerful of a god, but she knew she had the smarts to be a god, and that was the main reason she approached Morax.
And it makes sense if she's a goddess of dust. Like, it makes sense that she's not, she doesn't have like that forceful impact
Of rock.
because, yeah, she's like dispersed like in little tiny particles. So it makes sense.
And what's interesting is we also know that there was a god of salt. So it's also very curious that there's like dust, salt, rock. Like, what else is there? And it makes me curious about some of the other gods that might have been in the other nations too, but prior to the Archon War.
It kind of reminds me of, there's the god of dust and the god of salt, but when we kind of like break that down, we're breaking it into minerals, which again, geological forms. We've got, little rocks becoming even littler rocks.
There was Albedo, the god of cinnabar.
I mean,
He
might not be
the
a
god
god
of your
yet.
cinnabar.
No, I don't know what that
also
means.
I don't know what that means either, actually.
cinnabar sin. Mm.
But since you mentioned the god of salt, we learn about her in Zhongli's story quest, correct?
Yeah, one of them.
Yeah, that's right. He had more than one, didn't he? So when do we think that whole interaction may have happened? Do you think that was still Archon War-ish time?
Harvia totally died during the Archon War just because Zhongli mentioned something about her death being like a lesson for him during the Archon War. And her body basically like turned to salt, right? Her people turned against her and she lost control of her powers. And in some cases, people think it was a suicide even, right?
Mm-hmm. Going through that whole domain was very traumatic because, there's a lot of like allusion to, oh God, what's that story from the Old Testament where people turn into pillars of salt? That shit.
You're thinking of Lot's wife, right? Who turned into a pillar of salt.
Very reminiscent of that. And it's terrifying.
She like Medusa'd them.
Basically, Medusa'd them into salt. The spice trade should find that location and you could make big money off of salt of a god.
Oh my god, imagine. Who needs Himalayan rock salt when you can have Havria salt, the body of a god? Well, would you guys still love me if I turned into a pillar of salt?
Yeah.
Always. I'm gonna put you in a little charm necklace and carry you around with me.
I'll bring you some cinnabar.
Oh, yes. Dreams come true. But back to dust, not salt. Guizhong, so besides the fact that she was super smart and honestly seems very strategic, I feel like her and Kokomi would have gotten along very well in like their love of strategy, because it definitely took a lot of strategy for her to go up to Morax that first time around. And then to gift him all of her knowledge, basically, if he could become worthy of it. But a few other things about her, she loved the glaze lilies. She also was really into mechanics and mechanisms, and she collected like Conrian technology, which is interesting because that's like pre-cataclysm. Like, was she friends with them?
How old is Conrian? Like, I know that like we're talking about like Leeway as a whole, like it was there, but
It's over 6,000 years old.
Yeah.
but they're like that smart 6,000 years ago too.
There's a lot of debate with that, but we do know that kind of at the very end of Salvandagnar's lifespan, that civilization, Conria was kind of coming up and flourishing. So,
which is arguably right before the second who came, or around the same time.
Okay.
Possibly the same time.
And for travelers who might not remember, Salvanir is the original community that lived on Dragonspine when it used to be a beautiful grassy place prior to the snow and the skynail.
And the giant icy dildo.
Yeah, the giant ice, aka our tortilla chip and our 7-layer dip. But yeah, I just thought that was super interesting. And, Tiff, you bring up a good point of like, did they already have such amazing technology back then? Because we know that Guizhong died approximately 3,700 years ago. And we know that from a conversation that we have with Ningguang, where she mentions that contract started 3,700 years ago. But there is another place that mentions Guizhong's death, although I don't remember where I saw it necessarily. But we know that she died about 3,700 years ago. And that means Conria had that type of technology like 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. But I feel like I remember when we were learning about the Ruin Guards, who were what were they known as? Like tillers?
They were tillers. Yeah.
Field tillers. Yeah.
Field tillers. Weren't they originally used for farming and then like later on became like mechanisms for war?
No, I could be wrong, but I thought that they were always planned for war and that they sort of nicknamed them field tillers.
Oh, that could be it. I don't remember.
Oh.
Tilling the land with their blood.
I just was thinking that if they were farming equipment, that's interesting because Guizhong's people, when they came to the Guili Plains, did become agriculturalists. So I was like, maybe that's why she was interested in their stuff.
Dainsleif says the land is not to be tilled with farming tools, but rather to be fought for with steel and blood.
Oh, so yeah, always mechanisms of war.
Stealing blood. Stealing blood.
Bathe in his blood.
No!
Bathing in blood. Bathing in blood.
And you know what's interesting is like the question that becomes, where did Guizhong go to get Conrian technology? Because they weren't coming up from their door in Sumeru, right?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I do know there was I forget what story or cutscene it's from. Zhongli talks about the fact that the mountains were made and like tunnels were made throughout it. Throughout the mountains that even went to underground civilizations or something like that. And I originally thought maybe that was the old city that's in the chasm. The chasm.
Oh my god, you said chasm.
Do you feel like she was like in touch with Conria? Like maybe she had like a whole thing going on with them?
I think it's totally possible.
Was she like a Conrian empathizer?
She totally could be, especially, you know, if she's older than Morax, aka Zhongli, she also saw the fall of Arya, Sonnet, and Canon, and our moon princesses, and probably also saw the Sun Chariot fall, and there's a chance...
Yeah, I mean, that happened when Zhongli was young, so yeah, you're right.
It could be. They do say that he was born and descended into Liyue, whatever that means.
Thank God. He descended. Descender.
I know. There's a big like theory out there that Zhongli is a descender.
Well, they say that with her too. Like, do all the gods descend?
Yeah, that's also true. Like, are they born in Celestia? Are they delivered by the Astral Express? The Sia Quanta just drops them in.
Hashtag Sia Quanta.
Celestia's just pooping them out. Just like, there's another god.
Maybe. I mean, a god of fertility.
They're coming out of the Ark. The Ark is a whole thing. Like, we know that the Ark sort of...
And the Ark is two things. Twin things, if you will.
Can you re-explain the Ark? I know it's a Honkai thing. Sorry, Tim.
So, the Ark...
I was going to say, I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
So, the Ark,
and now
the Ark is a Genshin thing.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, the Ark is like if you look up like what happened, like how humanity originated, it was the Ark opened. They use that word, and the Ark is also a Honkai Impact thing where basically humanity's DNA was sent out. I don't want to get too deep into it because I know Tiff hates it, but basically humanity's DNA was like sent out in an Ark. It was called Project Ark, literally. And they never heard back from them, so we don't know what happened to the Ark. It could be that the Ark landed in the world of Teyvat.
Then meanwhile in Teyvat, the history of the world's creation was that everyone got off an Ark, basically.
They do say that once the primordial one kind of like defeated the dragons and kind of made the light realm into a realm for humans, that they opened the Ark for them to kind of establish themselves. Like the primordial one never created humans. They
spent a few years preparing the world for humanity, and then they opened the Ark.
Oh, and is this why we've said this, that Celestia might be the Ark?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a possibility, like the possibility of Celestia being like a spaceship. I know, Fiends, you've brought that up a few times. So it's possible. And the idea of gods descending from Celestia, because they are so much more powerful than anything, I have no doubt that would be why they say descend, or it could be another reason that they're just descending from the heavenly realm to the mortal realm for whatever reason.
Yeah, it makes sense in a few ways, because descending could be, first of all, descending from Celestia makes sense because when humans reach a certain status, like Vanessa, she ascends to godhood, which means she ascends to Celestia. So it would make sense that people could descend from Celestia. But at the same time, we know the lore of the descenders are coming from some other world. So it's sort of two different meanings.
Yeah, it gets very confusing because the same verb, descending, is used in multiple different contexts, but we're getting a bit too far. So Guizhong.
I was like, save Tiff from the Hawkeye chat.
I'm trying.
No, you're right though. So Guizhong was really we got into this topic talking about how she likes Conrian technology.
Gonorrhea. She got the gonorrhea fever.
So I'm curious, we've talked a little bit about the chasm and how we think that nation that's like long dead that the ruined serpent's from could have been part of Conria. Or was it older city that maybe was absorbed by Conria? Because the ruined serpent does seem very Conrian and techy, like in technology wise. So I don't know if like maybe Conria and unknown chasm city were in cahoots, kind of similar to how like Conria could get to Enkanomiya. I don't know. Like, are all these underground places connected? It feels like that's maybe the guacamole layer of the dip.
Wow.
What?
Not the bean dip?
I don't even like 7-layer dip.
What?
Yeah, I don't like anything in a 7-layer dip, basically.
How dare you?
I know.
I was about to say you're not a true Midwesterner, but I'm like,
not,
of course you're not.
I'm from New York, baby. I know pizza.
I mean, I grew up in Oklahoma, right above Texas, which is right above Mexico, so I love it.
7-layer bean dip. Give me the frijoles.
I just want Tex-Mex. I want Mexican food smothered in cheese.
Why do you think Natlan is probably going to be my favorite fucking region? Right now it's Sumeru, but I think it's going to be Natlan in the end of the game.
Is anyone's favorite Leeway?
Oh,
I bet you a very large percentages.
I meant of us.
Oh, of us? Nah.
No, mine's not.
Yeah, Feeny is all about Mondstadt.
It's my favorite landscape area where like you're on a mountain and it's like above the clouds. It's my favorite music in the entire game.
But it's not your favorite region, is what I'm getting.
What is your favorite region, B?
I go back and forth. I don't know. Like I want to say Inazuma, but the desert and Sumeru is like really my shit. So
yeah, you can have a tie. You're allowed.
Yeah.
I mean, Al's picking one that she's never even seen yet. So
that's
what do you mean? Oh yeah, not long. I'm saying.
I'm like,
I said currently it's Sumeru, but I'm speculating that I will absolutely love Natlan.
What's yours, Ted?
Inazuma.
Yep.
Did you notice how I didn't even have to like?
Inazuma was her favorite just because it was purple.
Yeah, purple's my favorite color.
I love what Amanda's is.
I like Mondstadt, but Sumeru's a close second.
I thought you were gonna just say Dragonspine all the way.
There's no humans there. Except
there's
for Albedo.
One human there.
He's not always there.
He's chalk.
Whoa. Anyway, before this hate slander continues, so Guizhong was really into like creating different mechanics as well. And outside of the fact that she likes to use Conrian parts, she also had like a really heated debate with Cloud Retainer about who had the better like ballistic, basically, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of an interesting point because in the timeline, at that point, one question, why the fuck do these gods need a fucking ballista pointed at a particular location, which we can assume is the chasm, the Chahusi?
Wait, what is the lore behind the Guizhong ballista besides the fact that Guizhong won and like...
It was there to protect the people. They put it up as a way to protect the people who moved up there.
And during like before the Archon War and like the early establishment of the Guili Assembly, there were a lot of monsters and a lot of weird shit happening. In the primordial jade winged spear, there's a reference to a Baku. I'm saying it horrendously wrong.
Asile, yeah.
Oh yeah,
No,
yeah.
Is it Asile?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a type of Osa, I guess. Either they just have a different name reference in the description, but that's why Zhongli made that specific spear. And a lot of the primordial jade weapon set is kind of made to attack those monsters.
Well, if you even want to take a second to talk about Zhongli, the water monster you're talking about, Al, it kind of had two names, like how Zhongli does, and that's the Osile that, you know, they end up having to fight again during the Liyue Archon line thanks to Child. But not only did Zhongli and them need to fight other monsters, but this specific one in particular, he sent out his Geo whale to go fight. I was like, you have a fucking Geo whale?
I took that as being Astaha, because remember, they used to be friends. They used to get along well.
Did he just fat shame Azaha and call him
Wow.
Damn.
No, you think it's so I thought that for like a hot second, but I then got this connection between Child and Zhongli both having whales, and I was like, nah, it's a real whale.
Child has a narwhal.
No, but it's they call it the Geo whale in the book. What's it called? The main
Rex
book.
Lapis book series.
Sure, yeah.
That's basically what it is.
The stone tablet compilations.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So they actually refer to the Geo whale, Geo gods Geo whale.
I had so many questions about it.
And it makes me wonder if Child, who is obviously a Zhongli fanboy, is he doing the narwhal thing as like an homage? You know,
his lover? I don't know. And then so when he sends this whale out to fight Osile, he fails, and he makes a Geo bird, which I found so interesting because we just got done talking about how Rukkhadevata sent this bird down in Sumeru at the Cataclysm. And I mean, I've always kind of seen the Sarai Island bird also kind of as like a bird of A. So it's just interesting. Like, they all have birds, except for Venti. He just has Dvalin.
That's a lizard bird.
That's kind of a bird.
He's a dragon. He deserves more.
Yeah.
He's a bird with scales.
Yeah.
No.
So I just assumed that was code for an Adeptus, like Cloud Retainer or Streetward Rambler. Is she a bird? I forget.
I'm dead. I
don't think we see her in a different form other than a young woman and then an old lady. Where like even that Echoes of the Heart, the Lantern Rite thing, at the end we see Cloud Retainer in her bird form, where she was in her young woman form before that.
So not in Adepti. He made a bird out of rock. It's like a fucking Pokemon.
I mean,
It's a
there
dinosaur.
is a couple of ground type birds out there.
Poor penguins, they can't even fly.
Aww.
They just get to, belly slide.
We're gonna see penguins in Fontaine, I think.
I mean,
I hope so. They're so
cute.
The diver boy has like a little robot penguin.
Oh,
I want it.
Even though they eat fish, which
Not
I'm
all of them.
not crazy about, but
Wait, why? Why are you anti the fact that they eat fish?
because I love animals that don't eat meat. Because I don't eat meat.
Are there a lot of herbivores out there?
Herbivores unite. Yeah, there's quite a bit.
Like
Yeah?
deer. There's a lot. Yeah.
Oh my god, I didn't even think about the fact that deer don't eat meat. That's wild. Do even Galapagos penguins eat like
Yes.
fish? All
Yeah.
penguins eat
Yeah.
fish.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, can you really blame the cold penguins though?
No,
That's, like, all they can
I'm not
eat.
blaming them. I still think they're cute and it's fine, but
I'm here feeling bad for the penguins.
Yeah, I mean the penguins eat the fish and then the seals eat the penguins. It's a circle of life.
Yeah.
The circle of life, like how fiends wants to kill everybody.
Well, I was just about to talk about Guizhong's death. So Guizhong, just to go back to the ballista very quickly, creates this ballista after her and Cloud Retainer argue over who has the better one. Guizhong keeps bringing in her quote unquote neutral third party Morax, who constantly sides with the neutral ground slash her. And he's like, yeah, I think yours is better, Guizhong. And Guizhong's like,
to Guizhong,
that dick is leaning sideways at this point.
but just to defend Guizhong, I actually think it's Cloud Retainer who makes Morax look at
who
them.
calls him in.
Yeah, because he refers to him as, she always says, one asked the Lord of Geo, or whatever she says.
She loves to refer to herself like that.
Yeah.
And you can actually currently find the Guizhong Ballista, or what's left of it, over at Mount Tianheng, which is like right to the left of the city of Liyue Harbor. And you guys are right, it does face over toward the chasm, which is interesting. I'm curious if they used the ballistas during the cataclysm, because all those monsters were coming up through the chasm. And we know that after her death, Cloud Retainer actually went and like finished the ballistas and did some upgrades to them. We also can see these ballistas being used on the Jade Chamber during the fight for Liyue Harbor against Osile, which is pretty cool. Especially because at that point we knew jack shit about Guizhong.
Yeah.
And we're like, what are these ballistas? What is happening? Why did Child summon a water monster?
Yeah, like it was like, why do I have to go to this specific one to go repair it or find it or whatever the quest actually was? And then, yeah, you don't know any of that story until much later. And it makes me want to re-watch that part or almost like restart the game in a way.
No restarting the game.
Well, I mean, not getting rid of mine, but
terrifying idea. Brandon did it.
I did
have a
it,
second.
and then I gave up on it.
I do it for the cutscenes only.
That's true.
It was really interesting because I had a whole different main set of characters. So
and a new perspective, right? Like going into it. But later on, Guizhong does die, and she dies during the Archon War. We don't really know many details about her death. And that's that. Like, all we know is that there's a cutscene where we could see the Yakshas containing her in what we can assume is like some sort of Yaksha field of energy. And I don't know if they were trying to contain like the last of her life, if that was their way of trying to save her. I'm very curious if there's like a statue of her somewhere. But she does die during the Archon War, and everyone's pretty sad about it.
Yeah. She turns to dust. I mean, I know we all turn to dust at some point, but she like immediately turns to dust.
That's what happens when you're the god of dust.
Yeah. Did the god of salt turn into salt? She did. Wait, she did.
Yeah.
Yes, she did.
So if Rex Lapis dies, he's going to turn into a rock.
It's good. You know what? He's actually
rock.
Turning into Dick Rock.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Is
So
Dick
there you go.
Rock.
That's why you can't find Makoto. She turned into electricity.
Oh my god.
Boom.
So at this point, when Guizhong dies during the Archon War, they are still vibing and living in the Guili Plains. Like, that's still where they're located.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have any idea where she died? Like, is that ever hinted at or talked about in the game?
Yeah, they kind of in the stone tablet one that B brought up. Well, that you called the Zhongli diaries. They talk about how the Archon War actually came to them. It was spreading across the entirety of Teyvat. So there's a good chance she died at home.
Yeah, but like where?
It's in the
You want to know her exact.
He's like,
well,
where
we do know
in the
exactly
game?
where.
Yeah, where can I go find her body, Al?
In Kuji Slope, you know where the pyro flower is?
Yeah, it's right north of that.
Yes, it's north of that where it gets all like dark and like really weird and dusty.
Oh, where those pillars are.
All the pillars. And when you go and actually unlock the pillars, it opens up a tomb. And it is a tomb that we can assume is Guizhong's tomb. And it definitely seems like from the topography of the location, as well as all these pillars, because when we look back to the cutscene, it definitely looks like this is the more than likely place where Guizhong died.
Like, you're saying that the 9 pillars, for travelers who don't know, there's like a 9 pillar quest that you can do, and you have to like go put orbs into like these 9 pillars, and once you do that, it unlocks a building, and there's like treasure and shit, and spiders. It's like one of the first times you see spiders. It's very horrifying because they're like the size of your head.
Bigger.
But are you trying to say that these pillars are possibly what the Yakshas are standing on during that cutscene?
Possibly. Yeah. Because when you look at it and the fact that a tomb. The entire location looks just dreary and sad as fuck. I think there's some more concrete evidence once you go in there, and there's certain materials that explain some things. I can't remember exactly which material that was.
And there's like a tombstone outside of it that you can't even read, right?
Exactly.
Like why aren't you allowing me to read it? What are you hiding, Genshin?
Was it just coincidence, or did this happen to everybody? Is that the first time you fight the unusual hilly troll? Because I had to fight him there. Okay,
I fought him before.
He welcomed me at the pillars.
But that location is just across the river from where the Guili Assembly kind of was situated, and where the ruins of the Guili Assembly are in the Guili Plains. So it's also near the Luhua Pool, which is also a creation of Guizhong. So we can assume, because of the proximity, because of the importance, because it looks like, you know how they say Guiyun Stone Forest was kind of made from pillars that Zhongli like threw down?
Yeah.
What's to say that these aren't kind of like similar pillars that he threw down that just haven't been, encrusted in stone yet? This feels like such an important place. And we know Cloud Retainer is alive. Streetward Rambler is alive. Marchusius is alive because he's Guoba. So the main players of the Guili Assembly are alive except Guizhong. So we can kind of assume that this is her resting place.
Interesting, because there's, like you said, there's no markings in there or anything that really decipher. Although on what kind of looks like the casket, I think you can obtain like a artifact or something on it. So
it's something.
It's a flora, it's that blue flower.
But yes, I at least I think this is her final resting place.
That's a really interesting theory, and it definitely makes sense based on what you're talking about. I actually just went there in the game to look at it quick.
Oh hell yeah, go down there, get in there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But do you think she died there, or they just like put her to rest there?
Both,
because there was no body. She turned to dust.
Exactly. So that's probably why they have kind of the makeshift tomb. It's not to hold her body. It's a tomb for those to remember her. I think the dust of her body is still technically in the air because it's all dusty there. So whenever you go to that particular location, just know you're breathing in Guizhong.
I hate that.
It's like, ooh. Is that a fart? No, it's just Guizhong.
And that's really all we know about Guizhong, right?
Yeah, until we have some more concrete stuff, which I know we've talked about the Genshin anime that's been speculated as well as teased and with their own teaser trailer. We don't know exactly what arc they're going to go for, what they're going to, show, but we do it would be amazing if it was about the Archon War in each region, and we get to see more about Guizhong and Retainer and Streetward Rambler and Zhongli all working together and having
and Deshrid and the Goddess of Flowers and Devana. Yeah.
We want that. Hoyo, if you're listening, which you should be because this is up your alley because it's about your game. Hire us. Well, we can write this. Give us the lore. I got you. Mwah.
So after Guizhong, I think the next one we should talk about is Guoba, actually. Because a lot of people, because they kind of announced that Guoba was the stove god during an event. I don't remember what event. Was it a lantern rite?
Moonlight Merriment event.
Okay. During that event is when they kind of announced that Guoba was the stove god. So a lot of travelers don't even know that he is the stove god. So I'm sure anyone who didn't play that event and then saw Lantern Rite this year where Zhongli was like, hello, old friend, was like, what the fuck is he talking about?
He really was an old friend. But Guoba doesn't remember. I mean, we think that Guoba had some kind of recollection of maybe who Zhongli was in that lantern, right? But he doesn't know who he was because of his tragic little story.
Also heroic story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So why don't we talk a little bit about Marchosius, aka Guoba, prior to losing his little baby memory?
Well, after Guizhong died, and I don't know if we know that the Archon War was definitely done at this point or if it was still going on, but there was a big flood that happened and our people were moving back down south. And while we were moving, it still continued to rain, and it was just a very treacherous kind of journey for everybody. And Guoba was actually making a delicacy to keep everybody happy and healthy during it, which is he was making a delicacy of flatbread with meat sauce.
I'm dead.
Isn't that
I make that delicacy all the time.
But isn't that just oh shit, what's the Mora meat?
Could be.
Oh.
What the fuck is it? Because like you bite into it's basically like a bun full of meat sauce, right?
Wait, that's so funny. Is that
Is it or is it more sloppy Joe? Like I can't remember.
I mean, in the cutscene of this whole thing that, again, we'll have that up on the site, from this event where we're learning all of this, Madam Ping is actually explaining it to us. We see it. It looks like a flat bow, I guess. So yeah, it could be that. It could be like a pocket of meat sauce. But it's just referred to as a flatbread of meat sauce. And that kept everybody really happy and dry, I guess.
I'm crying.
Dry.
Yeah. Well, they were cold and wet. It made them all happy. You see them go like, oh, yay.
That's the opposite of dry. In fact, they were sopping.
Salivating.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know what just happened, but I'm
Don't-
going to continue
Don't
on.
worry about it.
So our people went back down to Liyue Harbor, and they were resettling kind of back there. And there's something that happens. It's centuries after, like they're down there, they're living life, they're, doing all this stuff and being a prosperous community once again. And then there's another calamity that I guess happens, and I don't know if it's gonorrhea or if it's something else that happened, but Woba basically has to use all of his power and all of his might to protect the lands of Liyue.
Yeah,
And
it's the cataclysm.
it is the cataclysm.
Yeah.
Tiff was saying they're migrating at that point
Mm-hmm.
because they're like all these monsters have shown up. There's flooding happening. Like they don't know what to do.
I think they're already back down there before. I think it says like it was centuries that they lived there before the cataclysm. So they were there for a bit before Guoba had to use up his, because like when
interesting.
Guoba was like he was still his old self at that point.
Oh, okay. I thought that
Wait, what did you thought that it happened? The move happened during the cataclysm?
I thought it was either during or before, and that's when Guoba gave himself to the dirt.
I thought it was I thought they migrated slightly before, but I don't know. All I know is that Guoba used all of his energy during the cataclysm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because it confused me a lot in the story about, like, I was like, am I missing some other, I know the Archon War, I know the Cataclysm, like, I know all that stuff. And then it was like in this little cutscene, which is, again, a beautiful cutscene, but you see Morax and these giant hands. And I'm like, what does that have anything to do with anything?
Yeah,
So I was like, is this another fight that happened? And
very Raiden Shogun-esque too, like the fights that we do.
Exactly. It looked like the Shogun's giant hand things, puppet hands. Weird.
What if that's just a god thing, though?
The giant hands?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. But at this point, I think we mentioned it it was definitely in a previous episode. We talked about how Ruka Devada used up her energy and she became very small, which is why Nahida is small. In the same kind of vein, Marcosius used up all of his energy and he became very small. And then in the most adorablest way possible, he plops his little ass down on an offering table and goes, I'm out. I gotta take a nap. And it's the cutest thing because it literally just goes boop, and he's like, he falls asleep and he sleeps for a very long time. And he wakes up and he is, there's the littlest tiny Jingling laying on the ground next to him, who gave him some food, and he woke up and started eating the food and just kind of followed her around after that.
It's one of the few times we see aging in this game because we see Zhongli as a young girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The cutest little girl too.
Yeah.
I mean, she's cute now, but it was the cutest little thing.
She had a cute little butt and so cute little like same hairstyle but small. I don't know.
Yeah, so he woke up as Guoba at that point. So that's when his name actually changes too. And I think it's because when he speaks, that's all he kind of says is Guoba. He's like Groot. He just says Guoba. And he follows her around after that. And yeah, he doesn't have his memories, but Madam Ping, I think, tells us that, there is the possibility that he might not know why he's drawn to people, but it's still, his old friendships are still there.
He wants to make sure that they got good food.
Kuching tells Zhongli that she has an adeptal affinity. And that when Guoba
Oh.
woke up and saw, the chili mince cornbread buns that she made, that was his recipe. And he sort of approved of her cooking and decided to follow her based on that. And then Madame Ping notes that though he remembered nothing, eating the food you had cooked gave him a feeling of familiarity. And that's why he stuck by you. So
sweet.
I don't know if Zhongli knew that she was making a recipe that was Guoba's, but
I would assume she knew because before Guoba goes out to take his nap, he passes on all of his recipes to Cloud Retainer, Madame Ping, and Morax, right? Or I guess Madame Ping isn't there anymore because Madame Ping left when Guizhong died. So he gives Cloud Retainer and Morax all of his recipes.
no, it was actually Zhongli and Ping that he shared his recipes with.
Oh, that's interesting since at that point Ping had left the...
She was down in Leeway, though.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's weird. You left, but you're going to do this. Come on. It's a little strange.
Yeah.
Doesn't talk to anybody, but then comes back and is like, give me the recipe for the meat patty, the meat bread.
Oh, no.
That's what it is.
Meat bread.
But Zhongling, her father's also a big chef, so I'm sure he would know it. And that she might have learned it. And that may have been one of the first things she learned cooking with her father. Oh my God, that would be so cute. Now I need to know if that's lore.
She does talk about how her father has basically been the one teaching her everything. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense that Chef Mao would have been, passed down this recipe.
Yeah.
And then taught it to his daughter. If Guoba shared the recipes with Zhongli and Ping, we all know that it was Ping that passed the recipes down because Zhongli is useless. But at some point, that's going to trickle down to Chef Mao, who's the best cook ever, and then he would teach his daughter, and then she in turn goes and finds this cave where Guoba is slumbering and offers this food that he conceived of.
Ooh.
That's so sweet, honestly. So then that's really the end of Guoba's story. And I don't mean the end in that he's dead because Guoba's alive, but that's the end of the lore around Guoba. So then next up, I would think we'd have Morax. There's a lot of questions about Zhongli and his relation to the assembly too. He had a big shift when Guizhong died, and I feel like the Guili Assembly was a big part of his life and maybe even helped him kind of find a home of sorts.
Yeah.
And isn't the Guili Assembly just their names together? Zhongli and Guizhong. But he didn't go by Zhongli back then. So do you think that's on purpose?
Well, we don't know for sure.
Guili is their power couple name.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the first syllable of Guizhong and the last syllable of Zhongli. It does say that we don't really know what name he was going by, but the fact that they together created this and he went by Morax, but I have no doubt people who knew him better would have called him Zhongli.
True. Although I do think one of the gods, one of the other archons says, oh, he's going by Zhongli these days. I think it might be Venti, because that's his human name.
Yeah, because there's also Rex Lapis, too. Well, we haven't mentioned that one.
Can we talk for a second about how the gods can take different forms? Because I know we talked about this in our Twin Archons episode where we're does A have a body?
Right.
Does she have a body? Yada, yada. So we know when I thought back, I was wait, Venti used to be a wisp. Zhongli can be a dragon or a person. So they can take any form they want. So I think the actual answer is that, she can have a body or not.
Okay.
She can take control of the puppet's body. She could manifest her own body if she wanted to.
Interesting.
Those are my thoughts on that.
I will say that I don't think Zhongli went by Zhongli. I do have a kind of baby theory in my head that it's a mixture of Guizhong and Guili. It's the Zhong from Guizhong mixed with the Li of the Guili. So if those were two things that really mattered to him, he became Zhongli, because that's also his human form, and he wouldn't want any other gods or archons to recognize him since he is trying to live amongst the people.
Yeah, because that's his name while he's working for Hutap, right?
Wait. Hold up, but you said Guili, which is the name that they came up with. How could you come up with the Guili name if Guili is already established?
Yeah.
No, I think Fiends was saying how Zhongli came up with the name.
Yeah, I think Morax came up with the name Zhongli from Guizhong and Guili.
But
So
what Al is
Zhongli.
saying is that Guili originated because of Zhongli.
And I'm saying I don't think that's true.
So then where's the Li coming from?
She's saying that Zhongli took that name. He was Morax then. He was Rex Lapis as the dragon archon and Zhongli as the human that works for Hu Tao.
I can understand that, but what brought the Li in Guili?
I got no clue.
God damn
it's
it!
not the name because I'm pretty sure it's Venti that says something like, "Oh, he's going by that now? Cool." Oh, have you seen that gentleman around? He's just a normal man by the name of Zhongli now. That must be quite the change for that old blockhead.
Blockhead.
Interesting. So maybe it was something else?
And also, like, Venti, this is some, like, cute side lore, but after the Archon War happened and, like, the 7 Archons were established, Venti went over to visit Morax. Or I should say Barbados went over to visit Morax. And Morax was like he was like, I'm going to drop a contract. The Animal Archon's coming to ask for a favor. What can I offer them? Like, blah, blah, blah. And Barbados came over and threw a bottle of wine at Morax and was like, let's drink. This is my favorite wine. And they sat down and had a drink together. And Barbados kept coming back to Liyue Harbor to learn the area, to hang out with Morax. And that's actually what led to the original 7 Archons all hanging out together. And they would get together once a year in Liyue Harbor and drink and talk and everything like that. So if anything, too, the fact that Venti is the one saying he goes by Zhongli now, I think that just proves that Zhongli was really never a name he went by. Because Venti is the second oldest Archon as well. Like he's been around the longest next to Zhongli.
But when did he decide to become Venti?
I believe that he became Venti. He says it during the manga, I think.
When he's hiding himself, right? He's trying to hide in plain sight.
Yeah, when he's trying to hide in plain sight, he introduces himself as Venti, but eventually he tells Vanessa that he is Barbados. Because you remember, too, with Venti, he's also hiding his real truth. Like, no one in Mondstadt is supposed to know that he's the Animal Archon, even though, like, half the people in Mondstadt know.
I mean, there is only 12 people in Mondstadt, so...
That's why half of them know.
Exactly.
I like the idea that Zhongli, I mean, it makes sense if he made this name up because Guizhong, Zhongli,
Yeah.
Guili, like, but
I think it's cute.
He must have been named something ending with Li before.
No.
Because that's why.
No?
No! We know it's him!
That's a whole thing in the lore, Amanda.
It's literally how they got the... It's in...
No, they say they don't know
name.
what the name was.
Yeah, they said they don't
what his
know.
name-
They don't know what the name was, but it had to have Li in it.
It doesn't make him Zhongli then.
No,
I don't I think, do you want to hear my thought? I think it's lazy story writing. And I think that they forgot that Zhongli wasn't always Zhongli. I really do.
Probably. I think you're probably right.
Because everything points to the opposite. And he already has like 12 names and none of them have also had a Li in it.
Yeah.
So I think it just, unless, I will give you one thing, unless only Guizhong called him Zhongli.
Oh.
But I don't think so.
Is his name Morax in Chinese? Could it be that, like a translation thing?
Maybe it could be.
What was Madame Ping's name? Streetward Rambler. What was Cloud Retainer's name?
Cloud Retainer.
She doesn't have another name?
Not that we know of.
Okay.
Well, I don't think the Adepti do.
She never hid herself. Madame Ping only changed her name to hide herself amongst the people.
Can we talk about how Guizhong was everyone's cup of tea?
I mean, have you seen her? She's so cute.
I know.
She's my cup of tea.
But who was in love with her? Zhongli, Cloud Retainer, and Madame Ping. They were all in love with her, right?
Yeah.
Am I making that up?
No.
She just has that energy, man.
Yeah, she's like the goddess of flowers.
Yeah, there's just some people out there in life that have that like infectious energy where like people are just going to be drawn to them no matter what they do or say.
I have no idea why. I thought you were about to say an infectious pussy, but
I mean that
wow.
too.
They could not stop gobbling it up.
Not goblin.
I'm on my bullshit. Thank you.
But
sorry, I derailed us.
No, my God, you didn't, eh? But I guess our other people outside of Zhongli is the Adepti that are involved. And it seems like it's mostly just Cloud Retainer and Madame Ping.
Yeah, there's a possibility that there are multiple. I think Mountain Shaper, is that the guy that you love?
No, Moon Carver.
Moon Carver. There's another Adepti that used their antlers on Mount Tiehong during one of the floods after the Archon War, I think. Something along those lines.
I love that this place keeps flooding.
Well, it makes sense because there's sea monsters and, they're going to make some tidal waves. And I think it's mentioned offhand, I think, in Ganyu's Her Story Quest. I think there's a reference that her father was maybe related to the Guili Assembly in some case. Maybe not like a full member, but like just showed up and like, hey, y'all need help, I got you, bye. Like,
yeah, because while these are like our main characters, they do say there were like a few Adepti and stuff that were involved in, like I said, maybe even another not Archon, another god or two, right?
Yeah, there would probably be some like minor gods, because isn't there no, it wasn't Marchusius that made Zhongli's outfit, right?
That was a Yaksha.
Oh, it was a Yaksha. Okay, I was getting confused.
None of the Yakshas were in the Guili Assembly, right?
No.
They were just servants to Zhongli.
At that point, that was all contracts, which could have only happened after the Archon War.
Right. Because that's when Liyue was established, Liyue Harbor, and basically...
hold up, hang on. So, I want to make this clear. Liyue Harbor was established 3,700 years ago. That does not mean it was like the first settlement. Zhongli rose Mount Tiehong from the waters, because it was very wet at the time, and kind of made a mining outcropping. Like it was a mining settlement for a little bit, which is how he got the jade to make the jade winged spear to kill Osile. And then the Guili Assembly happened. He's like, yo, there's this hot girl and she's smart. I'm gonna go bang her. Everyone come with me. And then after Guizhong died, they relocated back to that mining encampment, which then became Liyue Harbor.
Yeah. And Liyue Harbor, was where the first contract was created. That's where Zhongli became who he is, or who he was prior to his fake death.
And it's where like the Jising and the Millelith kind of all became like the framework of how the Liyue Harbor kind of ruled itself while he was alive and after his fake death.
Yeah, because he did trust the people.
That's kind of why he felt like he could be like, yeah, I could leave. They got it. He
had to prove himself. Mm-hmm. He had to prove the people could do it to Cloud Retainer.
Mm-hmm.
It was not falling
and they
for
did.
it originally.
Yeah, and the Jishing take care of it all, and they run it all. They got things.
But is there anything else you guys want to add in about this week's episode?
I had one thing, which is Zhongli and also Madame Ping. They both sort of have this poetic way of speaking about the moon. Like Zhongli says the moon is a carrier of countless emotions. So many things only seem to surface as we gaze up beneath its poignant glow. Wherever the moonlight shines, the heart is wont to follow. And that's sort of repeated by Madame Ping. And it just made me think that they are equating the moon in a way with Guizhong. So I'm like, do dead people go to the moon after they die? Like, do they ascend to the moon?
Ooh, I'd be down with that.
Was Guizhong just a big fan of the moon and it inspired people to like think of her when they looked at the moon? Or is there something else going on,
Or did she return to the lunar palace and become another silly princess? I don't know. I don't know, man. We need so much more shit to know.
I mean, I will say it'd be very interesting if that were the case, because I also have found it interesting that Zhongli decided to work for Hu Tao. You know, he could have done a lot of stuff to blend in.
He's like, let me get close to death.
Well, I think he respects Hu Tao's respect for the afterlife, as well as, you know, the rites of, you know, death rituals. There's a lot of tradition that goes into that. And I think he found solace in that. Perhaps like he's got I don't want to say he's got a thing for death, but he's got this obsession with death because of the people who have died in his life. So I wouldn't be surprised that he's like, you know.
I mean, that's also his sugar mama. So
it's very true.
I would say my theory on that is he knew that Hu Tao wasn't going to give a shit enough to try and figure him out. She is too busy trying to sell a grave and do her thing that she would just be like, yeah, all right, this dude, you know.
But that's also not true because Hu Tao already thinks that he's an Adepti.
Oh, that's true. Will that come up in the Lantern Rite too?
I think so, because that was when, in the most recent one, where they're having like, was it Hu Tao who set up this dinner? But it's like, everyone come join! And like, there's Zhao and Zhongli bickering back and forth. They're pretending not to know each other, but it's so fucking obvious that they know each other. There's tension. This is very cute. This is why I ship Zhao with the Traveler half the time. It just goes out. And we follow, and it's like, you okay, my dude?
Well, also, Hu Tao, just to go back to, she has this interesting connection with the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
And we also see that in her sprinting. Like when she sprints, butterflies appear and she disappears.
She sees dead people. Why did I not notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's a cute.
It's like Ayaka, but she only, or Mona, but she only does it like in a quick sprint and then she reappears.
Aww.
Yes. It's like butterflies.
During her storyline, it's very much suggested that Hu Tao can pass into the afterlife if she wanted and come back.
Ooh.
So goth.
I remember that now.
If that's the case, Zhongli might be hanging out with her, maybe hoping to get one more talk with Guizhong.
Aww.
But he's also in charge of adeptal burials there. Which would also make sense logically that he would want to work for a funeral parlor and direct his own funeral, because that's exactly what he did. Mm-hmm. It probably helped him hide his death as well. So,
yeah.
But with that being said, I do think that's all the time we have today. Thank you, travelers, for taking a little history trip with us. I feel like we went like on a history field trip on like the magic school bus, you know? We went through the Archon War and the Cataclysm and like the olden days. And we're back here in present day Teyvat. Next week will be our season 2 finale. Wah, wah, wah.
We're going to go back in history again.
And we will go back in history to talk about Conria. Conria! But don't worry, we are not ending at season 2. Our 3rd season will pick back up in September. So we will be back. But we will see you guys next week when we discuss Conria and the Cataclysm and everything about it. Until then, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Dusty Nerds.
Not Dusty. You're Dusty.